up here. I'm gonna have a little more tea, and we can y'all can start us off. CW, that's a friend of CW's that's on today, Josh Wilson.
Hey
And,
there.
y-
I had the fortune of meeting Josh when we were wee little fellers, 6, 7, something like that, maybe.
That's
Um,
right. Yeah.
yeah, and then life kind of pulls people apart here and there. We went to the same schools, but he was interested in folding clothes with people wearing them, and all that. And then he became an adult, come back, did a little bit more karate. We reconnected and been best friends for easily 13 years, give or take some.
oh wow, okay,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
best friends through karate.
Yeah. One of the. Yeah. Yeah. Um, the whole reason why I kind of reconnected with Dub was because one of our mutual friends, Justin Burns, was getting into Thai fighting, and I had wrestled with his twin brother, Johnny Burns, and Justin wanted to learn some throws because Thai fighting does incorporate a lot of throws, and so I kind of started training with him, and he was taking karate with CW, and so that's kind of how we all connected. As I came to the studio one night, and the rest is history. I just kept going back. It's
Okay,
fun.
so was the initial connection through karate? I didn't understand.
Well, I took karate when I was a kid.
Okay,
When I was younger, like 7, 8 years old, somewhere around there, I think, maybe a little bit older or younger. And then I kind of went away from karate for a good long time, and got into wrestling in high school. They started a wrestling team at my high school when I went into ninth grade. So I was there from the very first practice, very beginning of Florence Springs wrestling.
okay.
And yeah, so after that, we I connected with Johnny Burns and then Justin Burns, and then that ultimately led to connecting with CW.
The my friend that introduced me to karate was a wrestler, and he kept telling me that I should join the team because they were forfeiting the super lightweight division.
Oh yeah,
I was 93 pounds in ninth grade, and it would have been the only person.
yeah, yeah. I wrestled really light too. I was 112 my freshman and sophomore year, then 119 my junior year, and then 135 my senior year.
Okay.
So I'm still a little guy.
Hmm. So which karate school was this? Where did you start at?
Was it SMA? Is
Yeah,
that where?
originally.
Yeah,
Yeah.
originally SMA, and then I came back after Dub had already started his school, Family Martial Arts. Um, but yeah, the early days was SMA.
Okay. Hmm. And did CW, do you have any you know Josh a lot better than I do. Is there anything interesting that you can
Um, I think the big interesting thing that I want to know, because my brain just kind of works on stuff as it goes.
I see the
Um,
fear.
All right.
you had the fortune of doing karate as a kid, and through adult eyes, childhood activities look a little different. They seem a little different. So your kind of core base, whether it be a long time or a short time in that period, it was karate and doing that, and then you come back as an adult. Do you can you think of any differences, like body wise and struggles, because when you're younger you don't have the coordination that you do as an adult, but at the same time you don't have the flexibility and some of the more easier natural kid things. Like kids can just take their legs and kick it straight up most of the time,
Yeah,
and
yeah, for
then we
sure.
have to work on that as we're all adults. So what would be the how would those differences be to someone that did it when they were young, took a break from it, and then come back?
Well, I was fortunate enough. Like I think that doing karate early kind of set me up through my later years just because of the flexibility. It really helped me out, especially when I started wrestling. I was already very flexible because I kind of kept that from karate. That leg dexterity that you learn early on, and that was another good thing about starting early was it was like a a fresh start. I didn't have any background in anything, and so I was building on top of on ground. Just building the foundation. Coming back as an adult, it took me a little bit longer to kind of get out of the wrestling stance and kind of um, trying to get back into a fighting way of thinking, not really wrestling way of thinking. That was probably the hardest difference is trying to get out of one area and go into another, trying not to just instinctively grab a leg if somebody kicks. That was a challenge. But as far as like flexibility and stuff like that, I think that a lot of that carried over from karate being in my younger years, and then wrestling definitely helped with my flexibility. So yeah, I think the biggest difference was just trying to combat the muscle memory of doing wrestling for so long, and then coming back into karate, having to stand straight up, and also just like hand-eye coordination. You guys are so fast, and I wasn't used to that. I was used to people like being fast, but it was just a different kind of fast than having to worry about a fist coming through and hitting me. So
Right.
yeah, I think I did that kind of answer your question. Is that kind of what you were asking?
Yeah, yeah, more or less, because I was excited from the aspect of if you did this as a child and then you do it as an adult, like what are like some of the hurdles you have as an adult versus a child, but I wasn't taking into consideration the fact that you went from that as a child to all of a sudden you still maintained a core physical thing throughout wrestling because it
Yeah,
really was more about the habits because one of the things that blew my mind was you were teaching me to wrestle and you grabbed my wrist and you said, all right, who has who here? And I said, well, you got me. And you're like, cool, raise your hand. And I raised my hand and your arm came up and you're like, so you got me. And I was like, oh, because we're connected at that point. Um,
right.
Whereas with karate, it's more your straight line attack. You're not grabbing and you're not like with wrestling, they're going to touch you. They have to touch you. And then you can grab them back and now you're connected. Whereas with karate, they can dart in and strike you a couple of times, dart out, and then you're just kind of the big like gorilla guy, like ooh, hey.
Yeah, I think with wrestling, it's very much a mutual combat where as soon as you do touch each other and um, get each other in your hands or whatnot, you both have each other. It just depends on who can manipulate that better. Um, with striking, you can hit me from a distance, and well, I don't know. I guess because once you get into striking, once you have me in striking range, you would technically be in my striking range.
Mm.
So I guess it's all kind of mutual. It's just on different spectrums of the mutual combat areas.
I wonder if that varies per height. Because striking, if you have that reach advantage, then maybe you aren't in the other person's striking range necessarily.
That's true. Yeah. Well, once you get on the ground, like height does kind of go away. I mean, it's very nice to have longer limbs or shorter limbs. It just depends. Longer limbs is better for attacking on the ground. Shorter limbs is better for defending on the ground. So it really kind of depends on what you're trying to do, the positions that you're in. But I do think that size does have as far as like length, has a better advantage in striking than it does in wrestling.
So did you take the wrestling and do any jujitsu? Is that related enough that it led you there?
Yeah, so my wrestling coach, he wrestled in Alaska and he did a lot of sambo, and he was a grandmaster champion a grandmaster champion in sambo, and he also did judo and jiu-jitsu. So in the off season, we will be training various forms of judo and jiu-jitsu. We did a little bit of sambo, but sambo is very similar to judo, or at least what I got taught. I've never really been to a sambo class, to be honest with you. But yeah, so we did a lot of judo with the gis, and jiu-jitsu. We never really did the gis. We did a lot of just no gi jiu-jitsu, but I kind of wish I did eventually transition more into jujitsu, like class somebody who taught specifically jujitsu, but I never did. But we did train a little bit. Mostly though, it was wrestling, just because once the main season was over, then we had to start training for freestyle and Greco. So really, the only time we did other things like judo or jujitsu was in the summertime, because freestyle and Greco kind of spring through the summer. But I
So
think it does help. The biggest problem with it though is in jujitsu, pulling guard and being on your back is a good thing. Trying to get that through a wrestler's mind that laying on your back is a good thing is so difficult. I mean, I
mm,
still struggle with that. I want to belly out and do a stand up, give up my back because it's muscle memory.
mm.
Um, but I would love to get back into jujitsu and give it a try.
I have maybe 5 minutes of experience in and
Yeah,
it's,
It's a
it was
whole
so
world.
yeah, and it was so funny because like I did a lot of private lessons with my coach, and I remember being a kid and like laying in bed at night trying to think of a new move or whatnot, and I would come up with something, and then I would go to practice the next day and I would try it. It'd be like a throw, and so I finally go to my coach and I'm like, Coach Sawyer, I thought of a new move. And I was like, it's gonna be awesome. I'm gonna like surprise everybody with it. And he would say, well, show it to me. And I'd show him the move, and then he would go to his library. He had all these books about combat, and he was also like a specialist in well, yeah, not a specialist, but he was in what's it called? Bible school. What's that called? Monastery?
mm,
Seminary. He was also in
mm.
seminary. And so, but what I was going to say is he would go and pull like a judo book from the 50s. He'd flip through the pages and he's like, there's your move. This is what it's called. And, it'd be some Japanese thing. I was like, God dang it, man. So, yeah, it's one of those things where nothing new under the sun. Everything that I thought I created was something else, but he had such a depth of knowledge in all of these other art forms that wrestling kind of pulled from. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's it's a lot of times I wonder in karate if the styles we see today represent an evolution or if it's more like a paper rock scissors um, framework where what we're seeing is not necessarily better than what's come before. It's just better than it may not be better than the last 20 years. It's just better than last year.
Right, it's just different. Um, I think that a lot of these combat sports kind of come and go in phases. Well, undoubtedly, the birth of MMA has really changed everything. Um, because I feel like before MMA, the different types of combat were very closed walled. Um, you only believed in your own type of combat. And then with MMA, and you saw everybody kind of putting everything together. And even before then, with Bruce Lee, when he started taking different things from other combat styles and kind of creating a new style, and you saw these merging of styles, it really did, I think, help everywhere. And we saw a change in combat that I feel like can't be undone because now we're seeing how, like, just take for instance Muay Thai with the collar tie and incorporating that into wrestling. That I would do a double collar tie with wrestling, and there's several moves you can do off that. But I don't think that that was really a thing before we started seeing this kind of combination of different combat styles. So, and I think it's only going to get better. We're going to continue to evolve and take things from other combat styles, bring them into our own, or vice versa, other styles, and then just the merging of styles will continue. And and people are still creating new stuff, especially in jujitsu. Like there's something new all the time. Now it might be something that's redone, just named differently, or like a different hip position. But yeah, so I think it's just going to be a continuation of evolution for the future.
So, did you do a lot of competing? You were a wrestler. That makes me think you were probably a competitor.
Yes, yeah. I'll be honest. I've never really sat down and like counted up how many matches I've had, but I mean hundreds. Uh, yeah, I loved competing. Technically, I did like practice probably a little bit more than competing. I never really did great with the stress of it.
Right. Yes,
Uh,
I'm definitely better in class than in a tournament setting.
it was funny because like I really enjoyed coaching afterwards.
Okay.
Um,
That was a
I was
question.
yeah, I feel like I was a much better coach than I was an actual athlete.
Hmm.
Um, just because, like I said, I didn't really I did enjoy the competing, but I enjoyed learning more. I really liked the drilling aspect, live wrestling, the brotherhood part of it. Uh, Competing was good. No, don't get me wrong. Getting your hand raised at the end is that's a feeling that you can't really beat that feeling. But in the same sense, getting kicked around the mat and drug around in front of your friends and family and made to look like a fool, that's like one of the lowest feelings ever. You know? But
So,
I after I got done competing when I graduated from high school and I started coaching, I wasn't going to coach, and then one of my friends who was coming up into eighth grade wanted somebody who did private lessons, and I told him I would. That's kind of where I started coaching and kind of fell in love with it. I became a much more of a student of the sport instead of
that's
um,
so interesting to hear because I've been thinking about teaching a little. I'm showing up at the park and trying to get people to show up to just
definitely.
spar with me. And the more I've done, as I've done that, it's pushed me to think more about how I would explain things. Yeah.
I think for
Yeah,
me, like when I started teaching, that's when I understood it. Like that's when it started clicking, and I was like, oh, because the fun part for me was especially like people like Josh, like his mind works very similar to mine, and it's very fast. But like I could ask Josh a question about any random technique or something, and the way that he would explain it would be just different than the way that I looked at it. And that one little difference would make the side thought that would come up that then would make a side thought for him come up, and then we were just bouncing back and forth, and we're like just having fun with all of it, you know.
and when you're teaching something instead of learning something, you really have to dissect something and look at it from all different angles because you're not teaching it to yourself. You're teaching it to somebody who thinks completely differently. And that's one of the joys of teaching is to just take something as simple as a single leg or a blitz and really have to break that down and understand why does this work and why doesn't it work? What position do I have to be in for this to work? Well, what if he does this? You have to really like look around it and um, understand it step by step. And teaching, I gained so much more respect for the sport of wrestling by teaching than I did as an athlete. It's a completely different world.
So in karate, did you compete?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay.
I wasn't a big competitor in karate either.
Okay.
I did a few tournaments, but I was still it was still the same thing. I like being in
Okay.
practice and learning. Yeah, that's
Hmm.
fun though.
Did you do a lot of teaching in karate?
I didn't teach too much in karate. I did coach a wrestling class there. I taught a wrestling class
Okay.
at Family Martial Arts that I enjoyed. I did teach a little bit when CW would need me to come up there and help out. I felt like I felt like I understood enough to teach a little bit, but I still felt like I was learning, and so I felt almost unfair teaching in a way because I didn't feel like I had the knowledge base to call
Right.
myself a teacher in
Right.
karate. But I definitely helped out when I could.
It was always greatly appreciated, by the way.
Oh,
Still
I
owe you for a
appreciate it,
lot of
man.
those.
Mm.
Nah, I would do it again in a heartbeat, man, for sure.
I appreciate you. So real quick, the fitness aspect of point karate versus the fitness aspect of
Yeah,
wrestling, because you've done both and you've got a good idea of fitness in the both of them and everything. Which one? I mean, they obviously both benefit, but they, to me,
sure.
they both benefit slightly different. What would be like some pros and cons of point karate for fitness as well as wrestling for fitness?
I think that wrestling is a lot harder on your body, um, with your knees and your hips, elbows,
Mm.
shoulders. Um, Wrestling really does take a toll on your joints. Uh, Karate, you can do, I feel like with karate, you can do a little bit longer, into your age. Um, Karate definitely helps with flexibility more, I think, with especially like hip dexterity and leg dexterity. Wrestling, you can still be a very good wrestler and be stiff. I feel like it's very hard to do point karate being stiff. I don't think that point karate would help, or you wouldn't be very good without like good dexterity of your limbs. Um, so as far as flexibility goes, I feel like karate is way more beneficial in that sense. If if you're well, things going on. If you are if you're looking at straight up conditioning, like how big is your gas tank, it's really hard to beat with wrestling. I mean, you're the conditioning aspect and how much endurance you have to have for wrestling is pretty ridiculous. I know that when because I used to run cross country in the fall, and
Mm.
wrestling practice would start up about I would say 3 weeks. Our early practices started about 3 weeks after cross country season started, and within a couple weeks of being in wrestling, I would drop almost 60 seconds off my 5K time. It's just a different type of conditioning. But that also just depends on how your team is ran too. So you can definitely have a team that's not um, conditioning heavy, and they're not going to have the same type of gas thing. Um, Strength training, probably wrestling as well, because you're constantly pushing and pulling human bodies, picking bodies up and things. Um,
Yeah, I think I guess
Mentally, oh,
I'm sorry. I was gonna say I guess a
no,
lot
no,
of
go
the
ahead.
culture of wrestling too frequently is cutting weight becomes very important.
Yep,
That
you're
was
not done till the sweat crosses the last thread of the t-shirt, and then you're warmed up.
then you're ready to go. I think that's definitely something that is a downfall of wrestling.
Mm.
I never liked cutting weight. Um, I've cut a lot of weight in my time. I did it all the wrong ways to get down, and
Mm.
that's another danger of that of the sport, especially when you're younger, because I may have done some damage to my body that I can't
Mm.
undo.
Well,
Well, I
like
know that I had. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
what kind of damage do you think you may have done?
Well, one thing that I know is so I got shingles at the end of my junior year because my immune system was so low. My junior year was uh, was when I cut the most weight. I started the season at 144. They did a BMI on me, and I was around 8%, and I cut down to 119. So I cut 25 pounds, and I ended up having to pull out right before the regional tournament at the end of the year because, like I said, I had shingles all over the right side of my body. I had flu-like symptoms. I don't think that I actually had the flu, but my immune system was failing. I had impetigo that had gotten in my bloodstream, according to the doctors. And yeah, my doctor basically said that if I didn't go home and start putting in some type of fluids at that time, then I would have to go probably to the hospital to
Mm.
get an IV fluids or whatnot. So I don't know. I haven't had, well, I have this, which is from severe dehydration. Just my
Mm.
skin is super stretchy. They said that it could be a collagen deficiency, but they said it's probably from the extreme dehydration that I went through in wrestling.
Oh, really? Huh.
And I mean, there are correct ways of cutting weight. I just didn't do it, and I
Right.
wasn't taught how to cut weight. I was taught a very old school method of cutting weight, and I know that they have hydration tests now, which I think is helping, but you'll never get away from cutting weight. But I wish it was an aspect of the sport that um, wasn't a thing.
Right. I've never seen anyone cut weight like my instructor. He would go up and down. He fought. He was 6'1" and would fight 152 pounds.
Oh yeah, yeah. I like if I had 10 pounds to cut in 24 hours, that wasn't a big deal.
Mm.
I could get that done pretty easily. But once you get into like the 12 and 15, that is when things get hard. I watched my friend cut 4 pounds in about 2 hours one time, right before a match. He came in, was 4 pounds over, told my coach that I'm not gonna be able to wrestle tonight. My coach was like, "Yeah, you will." And so put him in sauna suit and sweatpants and all that good stuff. Put him in the middle, and basically the entire team was running around him in a circle, and he'd get a fresh guy every 30 seconds. Bam, bam, bam. And he made weight though. So, Don, how about you? Do you compete a lot?
I I might be done competing. I'm 45.
Yeah,
I'm not sure. Like, there's just local tournaments. You show up and you either fight 30-year-olds or you fight super heavyweights. And there's some fighters around that. It's just what does it mean if they're. I don't really want to get in the ring because why?
sure.
It's like I need my brain
Yeah.
cells. I'm old.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that just being active in, especially something like combat. I've talked to Dub about this a lot. I feel like combat is the most primitive form of play. That's what we observe in nature. Is the first thing that when cubs come out, and as soon as they're able to walk, they're fighting each other, and not like to hurt each other, but they're wrestling. They're fighting. I think that it does something to your mind that helps a lot because you're doing a lot of problem solving very very quickly, and you're trying to get into the way somebody else thinks because that's half the battle right there is trying to figure out what they're thinking so that you can either stop that or maneuver your game plan to succeed against their game plan. You know, so just being in the sport of some type of combat, I think is really important, and it's something that I want to keep going as I continue aging because I think it's going to help out. Now, competing, maybe not. And I think that if you're competing, you have something not really to prove, but you want to test yourself, see where you're at, and that's perfectly okay. I just don't think that it's for everybody at every stage of life. You might go through a stage where you don't want to, and then all of a sudden something happens, and you're like, you know what, I want to see where I'm at, and you go out and hit a tournament or go to a competition.
Sure, sure. And I I like the social aspect. I like getting out and seeing people, and that's
Yeah.
why I came back to karate. It's for the people, and then I competed as part of that. And then I went to a handful of national tournaments where I wanted to do well, and it was about the competition, and it wasn't about the social aspect at all. And
Yeah.
I did that, and that was good. And I could conceivably see myself doing that again because there are actual 40 plus lightweight divisions.
Hmm.
But even then, lightweight goes up 35 pounds heavier than me. I weigh 152, and lightweight is 190 and under.
What?
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
40 plus NASCA events, it's 190 and under at 40 plus.
Dang,
Right. Yeah. So
pretty
that's
heavy for a lightweight.
that is very heavy for a lightweight, and don't get old.
Man,
His
So
vision start falling off as the number goes up.
I fought. I
I did
fought.
not know that.
I fought a guy that's 100 and I fought a guy that was 235 pounds at last year,
Dang,
and I came away
that's a lot.
the yeah the met the they I realized I was bleeding when I felt the blood coming down. No one stopped anything about the match. After the match, the medic's like, yeah, that's a pretty deep cut. And then he had to move out of the way. And then I turned around after he got done with me, and he was treating somebody else that was on the floor behind me. And I'm just like, this is nonsense. Why?
Yeah,
I don't need to fight people 70 pounds heavier than me.
right.
I won $50, and
Yeah.
it's cool to win money, but
Still, yeah. I remember I had a moment, like a little moment. One of the last tournaments I did. This was back, one of the last wrestling tournaments I did. This was back when I was maybe, gosh, 23, 22 or 23. But I was already coaching, and it was a freestyle tournament. And my girlfriend at the time was like, you want to do it? I think Dove was there too. Yeah, you went to that tournament. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember there was a time, like it was before my first match, and I just thought, I was like, what the hell am I doing? Why am I doing this?
mm,
Like you know, I'm not gonna get anything out of this. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I had fun, and it was nice to kind of see where I was at. But still, like after that tournament, I was like, yeah, I don't know if I need to do this anymore. It just wasn't as enjoyable as what I was already doing. I really found my peace in coaching, and I could be a part of the sport. I could still live wrestle, but I didn't have to put on all of that stress of getting in front of people and
right.
going out there and doing it. So, not saying I won't ever do it again,
And
might, but
I wish there were more like community workouts because it's hard to know how to stay engaged if you're not an active competitor.
right,
Um, you know, yeah. And
yeah,
there's some schools that have open workouts, and I've been going to some of those, and that's great. And but yeah, it's like you meet people in matches at tournaments, and you don't otherwise.
yeah. I do think that the fight community, the combat community, whether that's jiu-jitsu or karate, Muay Thai, for the most part, I think that they're very welcoming people, uh, which is different than like maybe some other hobbies. But you still get your clicks and stuff. But every time that I've gone somewhere that has an open mat, or I've been invited to a practice and I don't really know that many people, I have always found that people will come up, introduce themselves, and we're not programmed to go up to a stranger and be like, "Hey, you want to fight?" And not be friendly. So it's a very interesting dynamic when you go into somewhere that is combat based, and that's what you're doing. You're seeking out strangers to go into combat with, and it's very intimate in that way. Um, but I do wish that they were a little bit more readily available, a little bit closer, or at least maybe they are, and I just don't know about it. I wish there was like
Mm.
a public board or something that you could look at and see if there's like an open karate class or
Right, that'd be
something,
great.
or an
Yeah,
open jujitsu.
yeah. I sometimes though I think of I have called sparring. I have a sort of mathy background as well, a little game theoretic background, and I called it non-cooperative
Okay.
dance at times.
Non-cooperative dance.
Yes.
Oh, I love that. That's great. Yeah, it is. It really is. That's great. I like that a lot. That fits very well.
Let's see. We've been talking a little while. Anything you want to say? Any ideas on your mind?
So, what do you think changed for you in karate after you started um, wrestling with me? Like, did anything that you like within the karate realm change?
Yes. Yes. And so I'm glad you asked that. That's really good. Technique wise and things like that, a lot of it did not translate, but I really liked the directional movements that you had from a squared stance. Because that was the first time that as a side stance fighter, I really kind of truly got to deal with that.
Yeah,
So it the wrestling helped me kind of develop a more 45-degree stance, which was really good because it took pressure off my knee, and humans don't move laterally very well. The biggest best thing I think that I took away from wrestling to karate was with the wrestling. I wasn't good. I had like the John Cena 5 moves of doom, and that was it.
you were
But
good.
I was decent. But I learned really quickly that I didn't have to be good. I just had to be able to put the person in my game and be able to play my game better than they could stop my game. So with wrestling, a lot of times, with the exception of Josh, I would just kind of like get in tight and just outwork them. Like, just stay in their face in constant pressure and just be like, one of us is going to break. I'm either going to get tired or you're going to break. One of the two is going to happen, and I don't plan on getting tired today. Um,
Yeah.
and then translating that over into karate to where when it's somebody like John is so much faster than me. It's baffling. Like it's
Uh,
like
that's
so.
crazy because you're fast too.
Man, so whenever John starts going, I'm just like, fake it, fake it, fake it, fake it, fake it until I make it. So like I'll try as fast as I can for like 10
I
seconds, and then I really hope that he doesn't catch me going, you know?
I take that as a high compliment, but I think CW has some of the best timing of anyone I know. The intuition around rhythm and timing is makes him seem really fast compared to what I think his actual movement is. I think people who are good at that distancing and timing feel really fast.
Yeah, I'd agree with you on that.
I think a lot of that is just experience. Just being at Marty's and fighting big, short, tall, left, right, this style, that style, traditional guys, fast guys. That really kind of helped my body understand a lot. And I have a really good poker face when I fight as far as like what I'm doing most of the time because I don't really have a plan. I'm just kind of
Okay.
like I'm just flowing and I feel it, and like my body's like, we should throw a sidekick now and see what's gonna happen. And so then
Yeah.
we're like, all right, let's do
Yeah,
that. Let's roll it up.
that's what I'm saying. Your intuition is amazing, and I think a lot of people can fight for 10 or 20 years and not get there for whatever reason. They're bouncing in a steady rhythm, and then they strike, and they never get past that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. There was a summer of 2010. I had knee surgery and I couldn't fight. I just kind of had to lay in bed all day and then go bark orders from a chair at people at karate. But so I just started reading and like understanding everything, and I found this thing that I was reading a Bruce Lee thing, and he said the best rhythm is broken rhythm back in 1970
Hmm.
something. And I was like, that's really cool. And then later on that same day, I was watching a video of Raymond Daniels, and he was talking. He said, a broken rhythm is the best rhythm because it's hard to time. And I was like, hey, I've heard that before. And then I look up and I saw an article from Black Belt Magazine from 1991 where Marty was talking about. He said, you got three modes of fighting: offensive, defensive, and counter offensive, where you're either attacking, you're defending, or you're making them do what you want them to do so you can attack them. And then he says the best rhythm is broken rhythm. So I decided that day that three people that are way more experienced than me and I recognize as smarter, better fighters than me say that this is true. I'm just going to assume that it's true until I'm proven wrong.
Time
And
to do it.
yeah, so that's what really kind of helped get the timing and things like that. I like to think of it as like I'm like a CD that skips in my head. You know, I don't really get to hear the full song as I'm fighting, but it kind of like stuns just a second.
Yeah, and most people are so bad at randomization. People are bad randomizers, and being able to do that. One thing I did, I listened to some rap music in the '90s that got my rhythm just sped up, and I think that gave me more beats to act on, and that helped to break my rhythm.
I always play a different song in my head than what I hear when I fight.
Okay.
Because if I don't, we're playing the same game.
That's interesting. Yeah, some days I can get that stuck in my head, and like
Yeah.
when I went to Williamston on your birthday before I saw you at Marty's, I actually just like taped an earphone in, like a Bluetooth earphone.
Nice.
So I
That's a
had,
good idea.
yeah, they were listening to like hairband music, and I was listening to Taylor Swift, and
I love it. Yeah. Nice, man. That's a really good idea, though, is to tape in like a little Bluetooth headpiece and listen to something completely different than everybody else. That way, you're already on a different rhythm, and it makes it a little bit easier. That's a really good idea. I like that. Dang, next time I go to one, I'm gonna have to try that.
we've been talking about 44 minutes. We have enough for an episode, probably more than enough, and
Cool.
yep. I guess we should probably cut off the official recording before I'm stuck with a lot of editing.
Hey, thank you guys so much for letting me come on and talk for a little while.
No, it was great. I love talking. It was nice to meet you.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
great to
this
meet you too.
this is super cool